everybody, and welcome back to Miniature Hub. Today we will be studying all the Citadel paints and what they are: the base, layer, contrast, and some dry paints and some texture paints. I'll be going through them and explaining what they basically do and how different they are to each other. Anyway, so we are going to be starting off with the base paints. So here we have Warnfang Brown, Corn Red, and Deathward Forest. They're all base paints. So at the start of your miniature, you would put that on as a nice little base. So here's a little example. It's got loads of different ones, but these are mainly base paints. So it would originally have started with Calidor Sky, that's Seraphon, but we of course added more paints to make it look better with the contrast paints, which we will go through and all that. So now I'm going to go into a bit of more detail in it. So to go in more detail about the base paints from Citadel, they're as described as a high quality acrylic paint for base coating your Citadel miniatures quickly and easily. They're designed to give a smooth matte finish over black or white undercoat single layer. So say you get your miniature fresh, just out the box, just built, that fresh smell of them. You've built them up, but you start with a contrast paint or a texture paint or any other thing. You always want to start with the base paint so you can, get the miniature started, get the brown colours done. You know where you're colouring and what colour you're going to colour in, especially if it's a miniature with loads of freehand colours. You want to get like the base colour in and just kind of detail in the rest after. So because if you start with something like a dry paint, it's not going to work as well. You want to start with the base paints. So back to real life me. So now we're on the layer paints. Layer paints are basically added after a base paint to kind of make nice little highlights on stuff, to make it some certain stuff pop out without using the texture or shade paints to make, it just makes it look a lot better. If you're not even using shade paints or anything like that, and you don't have them for that, it can really boost up the quality of that. And of course, this does not cost as much money. The small pots always cost £2.50 around there, but the big ones always cost like £4.50, as I might have mentioned. And yeah, so we're gonna go a bit more into detail on that now. So Citadel Layer paints are high-quality acrylic paints that provide you with a huge range of colours and tones to choose from when you paint your miniatures. They're designed to be used straight over Citadel base paints without any mixing. By using several layers, you create a rich, natural finish on your model that looks fantastic on the battlefield. And they can be mixed over each other. This is the definition I'm given. So to make that more simple for those just starting out, it's basically something to improve the base paint. So a lot of highlights, a lot of textures, and it can really improve its look, can improve its overall feel. It can make it feel like it's actually doing something. It's not like someone standing still in a pose for a picture, and that picture was drawn, or painting was drawn by a 5-year-old. No, it's meant to look like it just feels like someone's moving and they're actually in battle, and they stop for a second. Then you got those highlights. You won't iron your clothes mid battle, would you? So yeah, let's go back to real life me. So now we're going to go into shade. This is made to kind of make it look wet in some ways, or can puff up the details, make it look better, and these usually cost more. Running out of Agrax Earth shades, you're really going to need to stock up on that. But shades are really used to puff out a colour, to make it improve, and so if it's bland base or layer or dry colour. As demonstrated, I am not fully done on this, but this would be the red, and the kind of shiny wet detail making it look like it would be Caribou Crimson. So with that, it makes it have more detail and look a lot more like it's shining against the light. Anyway, now we're going to go a bit into more detail on that. So onto the shades. The shades are basically specially formulated to flow over other paints and into the recesses on your miniatures, defining details and accentuating recesses. Once applied, they dry to provide very effective shading for your models. So yeah, as the definition says, these are used to help shading, as was shown on my Carnosaur that I showed you, and it really does help the overall feel, like there's actually darkness and light. It just pops out the details that you can't really paint easily. Anyway, back to real life me. So now onto the dry paints. These aren't like the wet paints, acrylic paints. Well, these are acrylic paints, but it's different. So as modelled on this Seraphon, you can see the light blue there. That is a dry paint. You know, it doesn't have any of that sunlight on the rest of it. It has just a dry, bright blue colour. So that would be modelled in the skink blue. And with the Tyrant Skull, it's basically the exact same. Dry paints just dry a lot quicker, as in the name, and needs to be used a lot more delicately. I will go into detail about that now. So on to the dry paints. So, as on the definition says, Citadel dry compounds are of a thicker consistency than other Citadel paints, which makes them perfect for dry brushing, a handy way to pick out the details in a model, or apply highlights swiftly and easily. So, that is better than what I said earlier. I don't think I can say anything better. Yeah, it's for the highlights of, it's like the layer, but a lot dry and very handy to pick out details, actually. So with that quick definition done, we are going to move on to real life me. Well, I think real life me, who knows? So here now we have contrast paints. They are basically shade paints, so I will maybe include this onto the shade paints, I'm not too sure, but they can put a lot more shine onto it, as the shade paint does include. And that is basically the gist of it. Sometimes it will cost the same, sometimes costs vary, you'll see. And yeah, I'm going to give a tiny bit more detail into that now. So, as shown to you, contrast is, well, in the definition, a revolutionary paint that makes beautiful painting simple and fast. Each contrast paint, when applied over a light contrast undercoat, gives you a vivid base and realistic shading on a single application. So, yeah, so basically what I said was just to make it more simple for some people. It really helps shading. So say you're coloring an art piece, you want it to have nice colours and make it to look like it's actually happening, as I've said before. And if it doesn't look like that, it will just look like just something sitting there, nothing's happening, unless that's the effect you want to go for, which by all means go ahead. But if you want some nice light to go down it, so if you have a light in your room or something, if it goes down it, it will give a reflection, or it will give it a nice contrast to your last one. Alright, back to real life me. So now the technical paints, they are basically the same as the shade paints, but with the Sterling mud it is thicker. So if you're trying to put a mud base on something, example here on my Mega Boss, if you got this, you know, you want a nice little mud base with a bit of bump, not just brown, you know. But with the snow, you got the Valhalla Blizzard, and with the green, that's basically a shade one, but it's different because it might be a lot more wet or stuff. Anyway, we're going to go into a bit more detail in that now. So now we're going to be covering technical paints more in detail. So this is the definition. The technical paint range is designed specifically for creating unique effects on Citadel miniatures. So as shown in the technical ones, I'm going to grab one here and grab Badland, yeah. So that basically helps with the base. It's mainly used for the base, but it can be used on the model if it is not thick, girthy, And that is basically it for that. It's not that exciting. In my opinion, I would not recommend buying them, especially Sterling Mud. It is a waste of your money. So I would stay back on them, and you can easily just get a massive tub of them from somewhere else. But Citadel is not the place for technical paints unless it is not wet. It is not wet and like slim, not thick. Anyway, back to real life me. So the ones I couldn't cover, which I'm going to cover them both in one, is spray paints and airbrush. We're going to go with spray paint first. As on the definition, a perfect combination of primer and colour paint developed to be used as a base coat and primer at once on all metal, plastic and resin models and miniatures, leaving a perfect matte finish. It includes 2 nozzles, one with a low discharge flow, specially recommended for fine lines and small details, and the other one with a medium discharge flow, recommended for thick lines and cover large surfaces. So the Citadel spray paint can be good if you're doing the certain colour ones, but if you're just going for white or black, I wouldn't recommend, as I've seen a few videos with them being used, and I do not think it's a bargain for its buck. But you can hop down to your B&Q down the road, and you can just grab a quick black or white and do that. Anyway, the airbrush paints. Formulated to precisely match the colours in existing Citadel Paint Range, these paints are designed for use with your airbrush. However, the airline paint range is not suitable for spray guns or hand applications. And yeah, so that is basically it for the airbrush paints. So with the airbrush paint, I would definitely recommend Citadel. They do understand. And you don't even need to get the Citadel airbrush air thing. You can literally put your paint from your pot in a dropper bottle, or you can literally just put a bit of it, you can scrape a bit of it in to the airbrush, and it will make it air, and it will literally work. So I would recommend getting an airbrush. Of course, I don't have one, but if you do, I would definitely recommend using Citadel. I would recommend using Citadel with all of them, apart from technical paints and spray paints. So that is the end of the video. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope this gives you a better insight on Citadel paints, whether to get a different brand like with Vallejo or whatever you want to get, or if you want to stick with Citadel. In my opinion, I stick with Citadel, but for other things like bases, I would recommend going with companies like Vallejo, which actually specialise in cheaper needs for that. But either way, I quite like Citadel paints, and yes. So don't forget to subscribe, like the video, comment if you want. And yes, we will see you next time. Good.